I could feel my stomach in my throat the second I saw the message. It was just one sentence, 10 words, but it tore through my chest like a bullet. Asterisk, so this is what you do when I'm not around? Asterisk. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A prank, maybe. But then the photos started coming in. One after another, me at the beach, laughing. Me leaning in too close to someone I barely knew. Me dancing under neon lights like I didn't have a whole life waiting for me back home. And the worst part? Someone had been watching me. Every move. Every smile. Every drink. And the person who sent them was my fiancé. That's when I realized I wasn't just being accused. I was being hunted. And the person I trusted most had set the trap. But what he didn't know is what I was really hiding. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you're watching this alone, because what I'm about to say could ruin more than just one relationship. I always thought I could handle secrets. I was raised in a house full of them, silent dinners, whispered fights behind closed doors, parents who smiled in public and slept in different beds at night. So I learned to compartmentalize. To wear calm like armor. But no one tells you how dangerous silence can be when you bring it into a relationship. My name is Alina. I'm 31. I work in marketing and live in downtown Seattle with my fiancé, Marcus. Or I used to, before everything collapsed under the weight of his obsession with control. It started small, the way these things always do. Just let me know when you get home, he'd text, almost sweetly. Send me a pic so I know you're safe. Innocent things. Things that sound like love until you realize they're surveillance in disguise. Marcus was charming, successful, and intensely attentive. At first, I mistook that for care. When we met, he made me feel seen. Noticed. He'd remember little things, how I take my coffee, the song I hum when I'm anxious, the exact date of my grandma's funeral even though I only mentioned it once. But over time, that attention started to feel weaponized. If I came home late from work, he'd already know where I'd been. Not from me, but because he'd happened to drive by the bar where I said I was meeting colleagues. If I changed plans last minute, he'd act wounded, like I'd betrayed him. At first, I called it intuition. Later, I started calling it surveillance. Still, I stayed. Part of me believed I was overthinking. The other part had grown numb to the discomfort. We'd been engaged for almost a year. I didn't want to start over again. The turning point came during a weekend I'd been planning for months, a cabin trip with two friends from college, Aaron and Jess. We'd been inseparable in undergrad, but adulthood had pulled us in different directions. This was supposed to be our reconnection. A no boys, no work, no pressure kind of weekend. I told Marcus about it a month in advance. He nodded. Smiled. Even offered to help us pick a good Airbnb. You deserve the break, he said, kissing my forehead. It'll be good for you. I believed him. But the night before we left, he got quiet. I was packing socks and a bikini when he leaned against the doorframe and said, just be careful, okay? I know how these weekends can get. What do you mean? I asked, suddenly stiff. He shrugged. I've heard stories. Girls gone wild. Drunk confessions. Old college flings. I laughed, trying to keep it light. It's a cabin in the middle of nowhere. We're planning to cook soup and play card games. Right, he said. Of course. He kissed me again. But this time it felt more like a warning than affection. The drive out was beautiful with dense trees, foggy hills, winding roads that led to this perfect little A-frame near the river. Jess brought wine, Aaron brought homemade cookies, and I brought this weird pit in my stomach I couldn't explain. I ignored it. For 2 days, we caught up on everything: jobs, dating, disappointments, dreams. We talked about the men who broke us and the ones we let get away. One night, after too many glasses of Cabernet, Aaron asked if I ever missed being single. I laughed it off. Said I didn't. But my smile faltered. And of course, that's the moment that made it into the photos. Because someone had been watching us. I didn't know that yet, though. Not until days later. When I got back, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen with his laptop open. He didn't say anything at first. Just gestured for me to sit. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "Just watch," he said. He hit play. And there I was, on screen. Sitting in a lawn chair outside the cabin, drink in hand, leaning toward Aaron and laughing. From a distance, it looked flirtatious. From the right angle, even intimate. But it wasn't. Still, it didn't matter. My heart dropped. "Is this from someone's phone?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Marcus didn't flinch. "I hired someone," he said, calmly. "Just to make sure everything was above board." "You what?" "I needed peace of mind," he said, like that made it okay. And clearly, I was right to be concerned. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the tile. "You sent someone to spy on me? On a girls' weekend? You were gone for 3 days, Alina. No check-ins. No texts after Friday night. What was I supposed to think? I don't know, maybe that I'm an adult and I can spend time with my friends without being tracked like a criminal?" He didn't answer. I grabbed my coat and walked straight out. But that was just the beginning. A week later, I found out he'd sent the footage to Jess's boyfriend, with no context, just a note that said, "Thought you should see this. Now Jess won't return my calls. Aaron blocked me. And Marcus? He's telling everyone I emotionally cheated. But what he doesn't know is that there's a reason I went quiet that weekend. And it had nothing to do with Jess or Aaron. It had to do with me. And the one thing I've never told anyone, not even the man I was supposed to marry. I didn't sleep the night Marcus showed me those videos. Not because of guilt, but because of fury. Rage that pulsed through my skin like static electricity. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see his face, so calm, so self-righteous, like he was the one who'd been betrayed. Like I was the villain for not living my life under 24/7 surveillance. But as I lay in that cold apartment guest room, yes, guest room, because I refused to sleep beside him after that, I kept replaying the one thing I didn't want to admit: he wasn't entirely wrong to be suspicious. Not because of Aaron. Not because of Jess. But because I had been hiding something. Not a person. A feeling. I'd stopped loving him months ago. It's wild how long you can fake love. Smile when you're supposed to. Say I love you like it's punctuation. Act surprised by flowers you don't even want. I kept hoping it was just a phase. A rut. That maybe the ring on my finger would someday mean something more than obligation. But somewhere in between his check-ins, his quiet judgments, and the slow erosion of my freedom, I stopped feeling safe around Marcus. And once you stop feeling safe, everything starts unraveling. Still, I didn't cheat. Not physically. Not emotionally. Unless you count the nights I imagined a life where I never said yes to his proposal. A version of me that stayed single just a little longer. A version that never learned how it felt to be studied like a suspect. The morning after our fight, Marcus left early for work without a word. I stayed in bed. My phone buzzed non-stop, mostly from mutual friends who had somehow gotten wind of what I did. Only none of them asked for my side. They didn't want nuance. They wanted a scandal. I got a text from Jess's boyfriend, Tom. You really screwed her over. Hope it was worth it. I stared at that for a long time. Not even anger, just this dull ache that made me feel heavy. Jess and I had been friends for over a decade. She was the maid of honor at my engagement party. And now? Silence. I tried calling her again. Straight to voicemail. That night, Marcus came home like nothing happened. He made himself dinner, asked how my day was, then flipped on the TV. No mention of the investigator. No apology. Like he'd checked a box and moved on. I confronted him. I need you to explain why you thought spying on me was normal behavior. He didn't even pause the show. Because you weren't acting normal. You were pulling away. Going silent. Being weird with your phone. I crossed my arms. So your answer was to pay a stranger to stalk me in the woods? His eyes didn't leave the screen. I did what I had to do to protect this relationship. That sentence broke something in me. I packed a bag the next morning and went to stay with my sister, Nina, across town. I needed time to think. But more than that, I needed distance. Space from the gaslighting. From the smiling mask he wore while gutting my life behind the scenes. And that's when things got even worse. Because Marcus wasn't done. A few days later, I got served a legal notice sent by his attorney. He was pursuing what's called equitable dissolution. Basically, a financial separation before the wedding ever happened. He wanted to strip me from everything I had access to in our shared accounts, remove me from the condo's lease, even though I'd paid half the deposit, and claim my name was used for fraudulent misrepresentation of a committed future. It was absurd. But it was strategic. He included the photos. The video. A printed transcript of a conversation I had with Aaron, where I said, "Sometimes I wish I could just disappear for a while." He twisted my words. My lawyer was stunned. He's painting a picture of betrayal and emotional damage. It's not illegal, but it's ugly. And honestly, judges don't like messy breakups. Especially when one side looks loyal on paper. That's when I realized he hadn't just hired a PI. He'd been planning this. For months. Everything from our shared finances to the paper trail of messages was building toward one thing, making sure if I ever left, I'd walk away with nothing. Not the savings account. Not the condo. Not even my reputation. He was creating a story where I was the unstable partner. The commitment phobe. The suspicious woman who talked about disappearing and came home with blurry videos of cabin laughter like they were evidence in a criminal case. I started digging. Old phone bills. Shared spreadsheets. His digital footprint. And what I found chilled me. The investigator? He didn't just start that weekend. He'd been following me for weeks before. There were timestamps from when I'd met my friend Sophie for lunch. From the night I stayed late at work and walked home alone. From a random Thursday I went to yoga. None of those were girls' trip. This wasn't about a weekend. It was about control. And for the first time in our relationship, I realized how far Marcus was willing to go to own me, emotionally, financially, socially. But here's the part one haven't told you yet. Why I really went so quiet during the cabin trip. That weekend, I found out I was pregnant. I took the test on the second morning. Aaron had gone for a run. Jess was still asleep. And I stared down at two pink lines in the tiny bathroom of a rental cabin, heart pounding, mouth dry. I hadn't told anyone. Not even myself, really. Because part of me already knew that this man, the one who smiled while spying, who built a legal case behind my back, could not be the father of my child star. Not because he was abusive. Not because he hit me or screamed or cheated, but because he didn't believe in trust. And if you don't have that, you have nothing. Now the secret inside me is growing. And I have to decide, do I keep fighting for scraps of a life that was never really mine? Or do I walk away from it all, and raise this child alone, safe from a man who sees love as something to be documented and controlled? The hardest part? He still doesn't know I'm pregnant. And if he finds out, I have no idea what he'll do next. I didn't tell him. Not that week. Not the one after either. Every time I tried to imagine the words, "I'm pregnant," they got stuck somewhere between my throat and my chest. Like even saying it aloud would give Marcus permission to claim ownership over the last piece of me he hadn't already taken. So I kept it buried. Meanwhile, his campaign against me escalated. He started calling my sister, leaving voicemails dripping in false concern. "I'm worried about Alina. She's acting unstable. Not sleeping. I think she might need help." It was strategic, of course. Documented concern. A breadcrumb trail of faux empathy, just in case he needed to paint me as emotionally erratic later in court. Nina didn't buy it. "He sounds like he's rehearsing," she told me. "Like he's performing a script." That's exactly what it felt like. A performance. One where Marcus was the heartbroken fiancé, blindsided by betrayal, trying his best to keep it together while the woman he loved spiraled out of control. And me? I was the ghost. The mess. The threat to his image of a perfect life. I tried to disappear, but Marcus wouldn't let me. Emails, texts, unexpected run-ins at places I never thought he'd go, my gym, my favorite coffee shop, even outside my sister's building. I kept telling myself it would stop. It didn't. Then one night, I made the mistake of answering his call. He started calm. "I just want to talk." Then, "You've ruined my life." Then, "You owe me at least a real conversation." I hung up. The next morning, I found a letter taped to Nina's front door. No stamp. No envelope. Just handwriting I knew too well. Inside was a USB stick. And one line scribbled on notebook paper, "You should know what I know before you say anything stupid." My hands shook. I plugged it into my laptop, every instinct screaming at me not to. It was footage. Audio, mostly. Clips spliced together, meticulously dated, snippets of conversations between me and friends. From the cabin trip. From lunches. From that night I cried in my car and called Jess, not knowing Marcus had bugged my vehicle. I don't know how he did it. I don't even want to know. What I do know is that Marcus had been recording me for months. Not just following. Recording. That's when the nausea hit. Not morning sickness. The kind that crawls up your spine when you realize someone who claimed to love you has turned you into a project. A case file. A threat. I called my lawyer immediately. She was silent for a long time after I told her. Then she said, "If what you're telling me is true, this isn't just manipulation anymore. It's criminal surveillance." But pressing charges wouldn't be easy. Proving malicious intent in court? Harder. And Marcus had resources, money, charm, the image of a wronged man. I had, what? Screenshots? Fear? So I did the only thing I had left in me. I went to see him. Face to face. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed closure. I met him in a public place, his favorite overpriced restaurant downtown. When I walked in, he stood like we were still something, smiled like we were just playing a long, dramatic game of chicken. "Alina," he said, as if he missed me. I didn't sit. I know what you did, I said. His smile didn't falter. I did what I had to. You lied to me. I protected myself, I snapped. From you. There was silence. The kind that feels like a knife pressing against your cheekbone. Then he said it. You think people will believe you now? After everything? After what I showed them? I paused. Let the words settle. Then I pulled the envelope from my bag and dropped it on the table. He didn't touch it. That's a copy of your investigator's invoice. The voice recordings. The timestamps. And a written statement from a former colleague of yours, someone you bragged to about having me followed. Now his smile faltered. I leaned in, my voice low. If you come near me again, if you send another message to anyone I know, I will go public. With all of it. Every recording. Every file. Every text. He was quiet. Then, softly, you're bluffing. Try me, I said. And I walked out. I didn't stop walking for 3 blocks. My heart was racing. My lungs were burning. But for the first time in months, I felt free. There were still consequences, of course. My reputation? Still fractured. Jess? Still gone. The wedding venue? Cancelled. The deposit? Lost. But I'd saved something else. Myself. And the life growing inside me. I told Nina a week later. She cried. Happy tears, scared tears. Then she helped me start planning, apartment hunting, doctor referrals, even prenatal yoga. I never told Marcus. Never will. Because this child, my child, will grow up never learning love through the lens of control. They'll never be watched like a criminal for needing space. They'll never be punished for keeping a secret to protect their heart. 8 months later, I gave birth to a baby girl. We named her Marin. And every time I look at her, I remember that silence isn't always survival. That sometimes, the bravest thing you can do, is speak. Walk away. Tell your own story before someone else writes it for you. Marcus still tells people he was the victim. But I don't care. Because the truth? It lives here now. In the quiet breathing of my daughter at 3 a.m. In the apartment I built from scratch. In the soft defiance of a woman who was once afraid to be alone. I'm not anymore.